So the first 4 episodes of Warren Ellis's Castlevania series has been up on Netflix for a couple of weeks now, and many anime fans, myself included, have been enjoying it quite a bit. It's always exciting to see Western productions have an admiration for the relatively niche medium that we're fans of. In fact, Adi Shankar, the producer of the series, said that he envisioned this as an attempt to bring hard-hitting anime to America. He and the other staff members even cited Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Satoshi Kon, Ninja Scroll, and Berserk as influences for this project. Which isn't the least bit surprising, as these titles have been cited as points of reference for famous Western films for years, acting almost as representatives for the entire anime medium. But whenever these influences are explicitly made known, how deeply they should run often gets called into question. On the one hand, it's highly doubtful that Shankar, Dietz, or Ellis actually want to reflect badly on anime, as they clearly have a reason to render Castlevania this way. Just like how they needed to take influence from different games in the franchise to fill in the holes of Castlevania 3's base setting, it almost feels like they're using the mainstream style of anime as an abstraction of the games from the 8-bit era. Certainly there are many elements within the show that point to it being a distinctly Western production, ranging from the higher density of music to the obvious tonal parallels to Game of Thrones. But if someone were to stumble across this show's Japanese dub first, I doubt they would think to see it as something produced and written by Americans. Even the Trevor vs. Alucard fight at the end is definitely paying homage to the style of veteran Japanese animator Yutaka Nakamura. With its triangle-shaped smears usually seen as one of his many calling cards. But while some see this show's anime influences as a highlight, others are starting to see it as synonymous with a recognizable brand, one that uses the animated medium, which is commonly associated with kids' entertainment, to depict disenfranchisement. Even though us fans admire anime's potential for storytelling, we'll also be the first to admit that not everything that comes out demonstrates said potential. Nor will we advocate that it should feel obligated to. But from a business perspective, if creators want to demonstrate that animation has the potential to reach a wider demographic, then it makes sense that they would pull from whatever sources demonstrate that maturity. It's just a shame that up until recently, there weren't really any stylistically mature Western animations that these guys could pull from, leading them to branch out into anime. Part of what makes these aforementioned classics last is their accessibility and open adult appeal. However, because intense body horror and quiet contemplative philosophy often permeates these works, there are some who fear that this quote-unquote maturity will subconsciously limit what defines a good anime. Now, I'm not saying the concern isn't there, but history has dictated that it's kind of impossible for anime as a whole to be categorized as just one thing. It is true that those anime influences are going to become more obvious the more Western creators try to capitalize on them. But so far, I can't think of a single example where a show's Western identity was assimilated due to its Japanese influences. Avatar and Voltron are clearly inspired in some way, shape, or form by anime, but you don't get the sense that they're trying to be anime in the process. True, they both at times exhibit that faux anime rigidity in the character acting we're so used to seeing, but everything else from their style of humor to the socio-political themes clearly come from a Western and European lineage. In fact, Avatar: The Last Airbender's overarching villain invokes obvious dictator parallels on a scale that you don't really see in anime, while all the villains in The Legend of Korra each invoke a radically Western worldview. However, people who are looking to use Castlevania's obvious style as some kind of negative example don't seem to notice how cross-cultural pollination has been an integral part of the entertainment industry for decades. But the openness and nuance of anime inspiring Western media has only peaked relatively recently. Now we're in a strange transitionary period, or at least it feels that way, where Eastern and Western anime culture is becoming more recognized globally outside of just fans referencing other works. Western companies are getting on Japanese production committee staff, while Japanese animators are being brought on specifically to work on parts of Western projects. The creative process is more involved now than it ever has been before, but even when the influences are made clear, all these shows still manage to end up standing on their own 2 feet. Any noticeable parallels just end up becoming another component of an identity that they all carve for themselves, rather than some crutch to stand on. For example, if you were to compare the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender with the later books, there's a clear improvement in the show's animation quality. A lot of those stiff and maybe even awkward movements could be seen as the show restricting itself by trying too hard to emulate anime. But as time went on, the restraints loosened, and things were able to flow much more naturally as the show came into its own. Despite this whole debacle, I enjoyed Castlevania immensely, as it felt almost like half of the good video game film adaptation we sort of never got. And as a fan of animation in general, any reference to anime was a plus for me. Deeds, Ellis, and Shankar aren't the first people who are going out with the intention of making quote-unquote hard-hitting anime well known to a Western audience, nor do I hope they'll be the last. I'm not saying that an argument for branding limitations can't be made as I just explained, but history has proven that when you put something like this in the hands of capable people who are trying to leave their own mark in an industry, any noticeable crutches usually get discarded as time goes on. The problem is that Netflix put Castlevania in a unique position, where we didn't get the chance to give it that time for it to come into its own, forcing us to pick apart what little we've been given. But it's possible that once things start moving again, what we'll be left with is a unique journey worth remembering.